Good morning, fellow treasure hunters and explorers. It's been a while since I've done a video. It's been a pretty busy summer. I've been on the road a lot. I've been exploring in the field, got a lot of information and things to share in due time. Some of the things we're still working on, and some of the things we have a lot of evidences we're trying to put together information for. I've been to quite a few mining sites and to some of our treasure cache sites we've been looking at and trying to apply technology to. It's getting pretty exciting. We're in the process now of getting a professional drone. My friend John has got us a professional drone that's going to be a big tool for us in the future. That's very exciting. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about in this video is some of the unintended consequences, or how some of the clues to some treasures are found. And some of these things come from petroglyphs that are found or shared with us, Spanish maps or different types of stone maps or tree carvings that seem to triangulate or point to certain locations. And then we get into those areas and begin to find more clues and more information that ties back into the other clues that we have found. And after a while we begin to put things together, and sometimes we find artifacts. Sometimes we find things, and sometimes we just, seems like we're on a loop, sometimes it seems like what was the old movie Groundhog Day, where every day you wake up with a slightly different twist on things and try to revisit the same site and do something different. One of the things that I like to do when I'm out on these sites is I take a lot of video and photographs, and then when I have time I review those photographs and video. And many times I find things from those photographs or video that leads to clues that we did not discover when we were there on the ground. In one of these I find a photograph that shows two strikingly different types of rock in one location. And then when I looked at the petroglyphs more closely, I came to a conclusion that the petroglyphs were telling me that there was a cave there. Had a strange lizard symbol with all 4 feet pointing down instead of a lizard's feet. If you notice, in most of the petroglyphs the lizard's feet are facing the normal direction of a lizard, or forward. In this one they're facing down. And what do lizards do? They go into cracks or they go into holes. Also in the photograph you can see the sign or symbol for the footprint symbol for go forward or go ahead. And you also can see a 5-fingered or like a comb or something like that with 5 digits on it. It seems to me that that's saying take a hold and move this out of the way. Well, sure enough, down below those rocks there is a cave, and we haven't really explored it very good yet, but that's coming in the near future. I want to talk a little bit about doing research, and you can get a lot of information about research from watching the internet and seeing different videos and things that are posted. You can find clues to sites, to locations. Sometimes there are people post other treasure videos that can help you with your research on a particular treasure topic. There was a video posted on YouTube that a guy found, or well, he didn't find it, but he went to a site that somebody else had posted a video of a large rock formation on the ground in the shape of a cross. And when you look carefully at the video and things that were on the video, you can see the Spanish influence in that cross. You can see the heart on the left arm of the cross. You can see, on the right arm of the cross, you can see the heart. And on the left arm of the cross, there's a crown shape. And then of course there's a circle at the bottom, and then on the top it looks like extends beyond the cross what looks like a scepter and dives into a natural rock pile or formation. If you look closely off of the right arm, near the wrist area of the cross, you will see a small cross coming off at an angle. This cross is oriented, the whole cross is oriented to magnetic north. When you take the angle of the cross that comes off of the wrist area of the right arm, you will see a small cross that is at an angle of 333 degrees. And I can assure you that that's no coincidence. That is what is going to point to whatever that cross is an indicator of. It's big enough and it took enough time and man hours that it's possible that this cross is a land claim marker that the Spanish would have used or put down to validate their possession of the land. So if there's ever a controversy with another nation or group, they could always say, well, we were here first, here's our land claim in this obscure area, and they could take people up onto this area that would be very hard for people to discover without aerial photography. It's very difficult to get up onto this little mesa. It's a hand over fist climb. There's no roads or trails up there, and only a rock climber or mountain sheep or a mountain lion could get up on this mesa very easily. On top of this, if you'll notice up in the right hand corner, there's a crown shape or a strange figure shape. I believe that's a sigla, or may indicate the crown or king who was king at the time of this cross's creation. Now, in order to complete this land claim, somewhere on that feature or around that area, there's going to be a rock that has a date inscribed on it. Quite possibly this rock is flipped upside down to protect that date from being moved or destroyed. I also believe that there is information contained in this, like I mentioned, of the smaller cross is indicating a direction that points to a cache or a valuable mine. Now, without visiting the site or finding further documentation of this, it's all speculation. And I also believe that if you were to travel to the archives of Seville, that this large cross would be contained in their records as a monument or a land claim marker. So that would be an interesting study for somebody to do if they were in a position to be able to check into that. Another interesting controversy that I've faced in the last couple of weeks is I've had some discussion with people over the cat face symbols that are found all over the West. A lot of them are found in the Uinta Basin area, and I've had a few people contact me and tell me that they were made by a individual we know made some of these symbols. Whether or not he made them all remains to be seen. My personal view is that he did not. The guy's name is Cheryl Atwood, and there are people that have documented that he made some of these symbols, and yet my personal belief is that he got this symbol from another tree or carving or something he saw, and then he used it as his own carving or symbol. And I have given the example that I have a little symbol that I use when I carve my name on a tree out in the mountains, and I got that carving from a really old timer that used to do the same thing. He's passed away, and he had a cool little system of writing his name, and I've adopted that system. And I'm not the first one that used it, and I've seen other people that have used that little symbol too. So it is my feeling that that's the same thing that Cheryl Atwood did. He used this cat face symbol for his own. But there's a lot of information out there that this symbol was actually a Portuguese treasure curse that there was a ceremony performed where it was in the book that describes this ceremony. You're supposed to take a black cat, clip some of the hair off of it, burn the hair off of the black cat, and then turn the black cat loose and the black cat is supposed to become a servant of, some people say Satan, and some people say it's not Satan or the devil, but it's Saint San Cipriano, who was one of the priests or individuals that performed some of these curses or ceremonies. So there's a lot of controversy over the where this symbol came from, but I have it on good word from 4 different Hispanic people, 3 of which are from Mexico City, and 1 lives in Arizona, an old timer, that contacted me and told me that this was a old Portuguese treasure curse and that he has seen these symbols and signs in the Superstition Mountains, and he knows where there's other signs and symbols around different areas that he has been. I've also had old timers from the Uinta Basin tell me that they have seen those signs and symbols long before Cheryl Atwood was ever born. And so in his book, in his treasure book, Dale Bascom has a tree from the early 1900s that has a cat face symbol on it. And the tree had the date of, I believe it was 1913, and the bark is laying on the ground from this tree, and he has a picture in his book. I'm going to show you the book. That's Dan. Let's go here. There it is. It's called Following the Legends, and it's a pretty unique book because Dale Bascom actually gives the GPS locations to lost mines and hidden treasures. And so I believe that the cat face symbol is much older than Cheryl Atwood, but like I said, until we get more photographs or more evidence from some of these sites and these symbols, still kind of remains a controversy. I'm going to publish in the video some photographs and things of signs and symbols that seem to indicate the cat face symbol, even though they're not exactly like the one that Cheryl Atwood did. I believe that the Mexican people that have seen this carving, they all tell me that it's taboo, that it's not good, then they understand what it means. It means that it's a curse, and the cat face is watching the area in which you want to protect. And so I'm going to take their word for it. I'm going to take the word of the old timers that say that they've seen carvings and stuff that were older than Cheryl Atwood. And the picture that Dale Bascom has in his book that obviously was many years older than Cheryl Atwood and had the date of the early 1900s on it. So if you see any of those carvings or know where any old carvings are like that, document them, and if you would, send me a copy in my email, which is found in the information, the description below. Regarding the cat face symbol, I wanted to read a statement here in Dale Bascom's book. It said, there's a cat face that has fallen from a large quake and aspen tree in Rhodes Canyon. According to Verl.org, it had once had the date of 1911 carved next to it. I first saw the symbol on the tree in the summer of 2003. The large tree was dead and the bark with the cat face on it had fallen from it to the ground. I didn't think of taking the symbol at the time, but returned a year later to do so, only to find it had deteriorated so much that it was almost unrecognizable and hardly worth taking. And then he has a picture. This picture shows what it looked like in 2003. It was near the base of the tree it fell from. And then he has a photograph here of it and the GPS coordinates. I'm not going to show his picture here, that's his photo, but you want to check it out, you can get his book, Following the Legends. It's a good book. It's well worth reading, and it's got some great GPS coordinates for starting treasure hunts. I will mention that he does say in here that one of his theories, he says, a theory I have considered is that miners of Spanish descent may have checked on their mines and remarked them with the cap faces and are awaiting the time they will be allowed to work them again. And so one of his theories is why these symbols have shown up at later times and have been that they were remarked. I mentioned earlier that some of them were probably made by Cheryl Atwood, and this is probably the case. So I guess a little bit of the mystery continues. In another incident, a unintended consequence was a friend of mine, Dan Lowe, had asked me to go check out a location for him since he lives in northern Utah. And I had some time, so I went out and checked on a site. I thought I had my directions and information correct, but I ended up in the wrong area. And while I was in the wrong area, I actually found something even more interesting than what I was originally headed out to look for. And we don't know if this monument, the monument and the mine that I found, was related to the previous reason that I was in the area, but as a result it widened our treasure hunting efforts and gave us some more things to look at and to research and to look for. And that's pretty much the way it is with anything. Until you actually get out into the field or dig deep into the research, you're not going to find things on a superficial basis. You have to really get into it. You have to spend the time in the field at that location or close to the location as possible, and then you're going to begin to find things, not just what you're looking for, but other things that are going to lead to more discoveries and perhaps other adventures. When you find the evidence of one civilization in a particular area, you're going to find more and more evidence or more habitation or sites to begin to look at. And when there's smoke, there's fire, and when there's actually something to be solved in the area, there's going to be a lot of evidence to find in the field. On another occasion, several years ago, while researching and looking for the Forest Fen treasure, I came across and found a very valuable mining prospect. I found a piece of cinnabar that had other minerals in it, and it had visible gold in it. And a hint of riches, new and old. And so many times while you're looking for one thing, you will find something else if you keep your eyes open and you are aware of those things. If you're a treasure hunter, you need to be multifaceted. You need to be looking for mining opportunities, for outcroppings, for gosens, for mineralized rocks and formations. You need to look for peacock ore, for collapsed mine tunnels, old mining areas that have old trails or mine dumps. You need to know and understand a lot about minerals, because in areas where a cache could be, a treasure may be kept, or a valuable old mine is lost, there's going to be signs and things that lead you to understand and know that this is an area that things like this could be. You need to be able to identify gosens and mine dumps and peacock ore and outcroppings. You need to know and understand mineralized deposits and the types of deposits that facilitate gold and silver, copper, and various types of minerals that are valuable. And so a treasure hunter needs to be a multifaceted individual that knows and understands things about mining, exploration, metal detecting, about cache and treasure hunting, Spanish treasure signs and symbols, KGC, Knights Templar, uh, all these different, the French, the Portuguese, and Native Americans. And so there's so many fun and interesting things that you're going to come across while you're looking for one thing, and it's going to be quite by accident. But when you're out there in the field researching and looking and you have your eyes open, you're going to find other things that may be even more interesting or valuable than what you were originally looking for. To give you a few examples of things that I found, different minerals and things that I found while I've been out treasure hunting for Spanish signs or symbols or chasing down a treasure story. For instance, this is a piece of what's called selenite. It's a mineral of gypsum. This piece happens to have silver in it. This is what the Spanish were actually mining in this particular area that we were searching. We found 7 mines or 7 areas that the Spanish were mining this stuff. Another time, while I was in an area looking for a cave that supposedly contained a family's treasure, I found a chocolate quartz vein. And after taking a sample, testing it using stannous chloride, I found out that this quartz had a lot of gold in it. The stannous chloride turned deep purple. This has some high-grade gold in it. The problem with this is it's a very small vein. It's only in a couple of bands, and so if you were to mine out all the present quartz, you might be able to get a couple ounces of gold out of there. Another time I was metal detecting along the Spanish Trail in an area where the Spanish camped, and I found this, which looks just like a regular old piece of sandstone, but believe it or not, this is highly mineralized. I don't know what's in it yet. I haven't crushed it and tested it, but this sets my metal detector off in a big way. Most likely iron, but it could be silver or gold. Another time when I was out exploring and chasing a treasure story, I was going down an old road and I happened to see this piece of quartz and granite, which was laying on the middle of the road. I got off my four-wheeler and picked this piece up. It's very heavy. Tested it with my pinpointer, my metal detecting pinpointer. Sounded off. Has a lot of iron and also has some gold in it. I discovered just up the hill from where I found this is a large outcropping of this material that's loaded with quartz. In another situation, I was out chasing a treasure story, looking at a Spanish map that was on stone in the area, and I picked up a piece of conglomerate rock that was very heavy. I took it home to see what was in it, and lo and behold, there's visible gold right here. I'll put a close-up photograph on the screen of this particular piece, but there's visible gold in this piece of conglomerate rock. And the whole formation is a big outcropping. It's highly mineralized. You can see the mineral, and there's a lot of petrified wood, there's a lot of this conglomerate rock, and there's a lot of different types of minerals and gravels in this area. This is a piece of ore that I talked about earlier when I was looking for the Forest Fen treasure. This has some, this is low-grade cinnabar. It looks very dark. When I first picked it up, you could see beads of mercury on it in different places, so it's not the safest piece of rock to handle. But if you look in certain places, you can see iron, and in a few places you can see a little bit of visible gold. My friend Tracy and Greg Gardner were visiting me, and Greg has an XRF machine, XRF gun, and he tested this sample and he said, yes, this has gold in it. This is another example of some of the things that you're going to find when you're out treasure hunting and exploring. You're going to find arrowheads, you're going to find this, which happens to be a fossilized dinosaur egg. It's a piece of it. I've got a cluster of them that this came from. This just happens to be one of the pieces that were broken, and you can look inside and you can actually see the yolk of the egg. It's fascinating. The others are just perfectly, or not perfectly round, but they're oblong shaped. You can see their eggs from the texture of the surface. They're real leathery looking, and then you can see the different, the white and then the petrified yolk in the middle. So treasure hunting is a multifaceted exploration, and if you treat it that way, you're never going to come home empty-handed. You're never going to come home without a story or an experience that you're going to be able to remember for the rest of your life. I couldn't resist showing a few more of my geological finds, my rock samples. This is another example that kind of goes along with the dinosaur egg. This is actually very waxy to the feel, very, very smooth. You see how the size of it, but every surface on this is almost been polished. This is actually a gastrolith. This was in a dinosaur's gizzard, and I found 3 of them at the location where I found this one. This is the best sample, the biggest one. And so that's just like chickens have a gizzard and they put rocks in there, and then when they swallow their food it goes in there and helps grind it up before digestion. I guess some of the dinosaurs had the same thing. I guess they're like a giant chicken, some of them. This is a piece of quartzite that has some gold in it. This came from a cave in the Uinta Mountains. And we rappelled down into this cave, took some samples. I brought the samples home, and some of the smaller samples that weren't as cool as this one I crushed up and tested it with stannous chloride, and lo and behold it had small amounts of gold in it, but it did have gold in it. This is a very interesting example of something that you wouldn't consider having any valuable mineral in it. This came from the Silver Reef mining area, the district, and this is a very heavy geode. I took quite a few of these, and some of the ones that weren't as interesting, I crushed them up and tested them with silver testing methods. I've talked about it before that I've got some books that I have a couple of copies left, and that are the old books that were put out, and I'm going to grab them real quick here to show you. This is Duke's Short Course in Prospecting and Mineral Identification, and this is Duke's Quick Quantitative or Qualitative Analysis. And so these 2 books right here are very valuable books that have helped me considerably. They're given to me by my grandfather many years ago. My grandfather was a prospector and a miner on the Kimberly Mining District in central Utah. After he sold his dairy herd and retired, he went to mining, and he had several prospects and gold mines in the Kimberly area, and I received all of his samples and a lot of his mining equipment, as well as these valuable books. When he passed away, my grandma gave them to me. My step-grandma, actually. But anyway, I have these available if somebody wants to purchase a copy of them. These are out of print. They're public domain information that's no longer printed or published, but you can get a copy of it by following the link down below. Anyway, by using the methods talked about for testing for silver, I crushed up quite a few of these and separated everything out, got the heavier metals. There was some iron in them, but there's also quite a bit of silver in these. And so the same thing that deposited the silver in the sandstone in this particular area, some of the petrified logs that were in this area were when the pioneers, the early miners, discovered the silver in this sandstone formation. Some of the petrified logs had actually were impregnated, were completely covered with silver. And it would have been probably one of the wonders of the world if they went to crush it up and mine them out. But I'm sure there's still more of that around if you were to do a lot of serious prospecting in that area. But anyway, these geodes have silver in them. And so I was trying to figure out where the Spanish were mining and what they were mining. And I came across these, I tested them, they had silver in them, and so perhaps that is one of the things that the Spanish were using to extract silver from. This is an interesting thing. It looks like a giant tooth from a dinosaur or from some kind of a prehistoric creature, but I actually think it's just a piece of lava. This was found in an area with a lot of lava. It looks like lava, it feels like lava, it's a little heavier than your average piece of lava. I tested it with my pinpointer and it gives me a very strong iron signal, and so I know at least there's iron in this. And of course we know that with volcanic material, a lot of gold and silver and precious metals come up and precipitate out into the surrounding area and into the deposit. Gold, and the Spanish have an old saying that said, "Gold rides an iron horse." So if you have a deposit of iron, you have a possibility of also having gold deposited along with it. One time I was out hunting and I lost a key. I had a trail camera that was, for my hunting, and as I was unlocking it, I dropped the key. It fell down into the leaves. I couldn't find it. As hard as I looked, I couldn't find the key. It was a small key. I couldn't get my camera off the tree without the key, so I went back to my truck, and I always had my metal detector in there. I took my metal detector over to where I had the camera. I tried to find the key, but every time I turned the detector on or around the area, I kept getting that overwhelming iron signal that wouldn't allow me to find the key. Lo and behold, I moved the leaves out of the way. I started pulling huge chunks of iron out of the ground. I was literally on top of a huge gossan, an iron outcropping. I did eventually find the key, but in the process of finding the key, I found a huge iron gossan that needs to have a claim on it, needs to be tested. To this day, I haven't crushed up any of the rock to test it for gold or to see what's there. There's just only so many things that you can do, and at that time I was guiding some hunts and busy hunting, and I didn't have time to get back to it, and it's in a remote area, so hopefully someday when I get some free time I'll be able to get back into that area. This particular piece of quartz or quartzite has quite a bit of silver in it. You can see the black right here. I actually a long time ago broke a piece of it off and crushed it up and tested it, and it has quite a bit of silver in it. I haven't heard of silver being in quartz. You always hear it associated with gold, but lo and behold, it is. And I didn't sample out any gold in this, but there's a pretty good value for silver in this. And this is a pretty good sized quartz outcropping. It's really rotten. I mean, I could literally hit this on the edge of this wooden table and it'd break in half. But I put a dent in my table here, so I'm not going to do it. But so keep your eyes open when you're out looking for treasure, or looking for when you're out looking for Spanish stuff, or when you're out exploring, when you're checking out different sites. Keep your eyes open for mining prospects. If you're into mining, you can easily find areas that you could open a mine or do some more exploring. These are a couple of things I've metal detected over the years. I was looking at for a Spanish cache site that was associated with a battle between the Indians and the Spanish. and in central Utah area, and I found this old part of an old hand-forged shovel. Still got a piece of wood inside of it. This iron is very old. We've tested it with XRF, and it's not a modern iron, and it's been hand forged. I think it's about 250 to 300 years old, according to the numbers and the research that we've done on it. In that same area, while looking for this particular cache, I found this piece of old iron, which is associated with a rumor or a story that the Spanish were carrying gold and silver in iron boxes. I actually found, I think, one of these boxes, but I haven't found any of the gold or silver that was supposedly in it. So perhaps the box was broken open and the contents were taken. But these are some of the things that when you're treasure hunting you can find with your metal detector, and it'll give you a clue to know you're in the right area. Another time, while doing research on a location of a cannon that our friend Paul Tabby, who is no longer with us, told us about, I found the cannon that he told us about on Google Earth by doing a search. It was almost unbelievable, but he told us where the cannon was at and where the Indians kicked it off the cliff, and he said that it stuck in the ground on an angle, and lo and behold, when I got on Google Earth, I found it. Years ago, there was a stone map found by Jacob Hamlin, and a copy of what he saw was, or what he had was copied by another gentleman by the name of S. Burroughs in 1852. And basically, when I saw the map, I knew it was a star map, and it shows these two constellations. Triangulum, which is in our November sky. It shows these stars connected into a constellation, and then a line going down to Hamal, which is probably the brightest star in this Triangulum galaxy. Interestingly enough, on the Hamlin map that he found, the stone map that he found was on black slate, and it was turned upside down. It shows a box right here on the map, which surprisingly there's a little constellation right there, and that is shown as the treasure location. When I first saw the map, I knew exactly what it pertained to. I knew the location of this, which interestingly enough can be found by drawing lines through these different constellations, and it will absolutely pinpoint the location. You've heard the term as above, so below, made famous probably by Oak Island. But in this particular thing, each one of these things, including this point here, are marked with monuments on the ground. So as above, so below. They literally mark the monuments on the ground to represent the constellations. I knew this map was made in November because in this latitude and longitude, Triangulum is visible in November. Later, I found another map hidden or placed in a similar type of fashion, where it was upside down on the ground on a piece of rock that stood out, was flat, was probably about 85 pounds. And when I flipped the rock over, it had this map on it, along with an inscription that was written around in Spanish, had a few more little things carved into the stone, and actually it looked very, very new. In fact, when I first saw it, I thought it might be a hoax, but the fact that because it looked so fresh and so recent, but the fact that it was upside down on its face, and the backside had lichen and things like that growing on top of it, I knew it had to be there for at least a couple hundred years, or the age of the size of the lichen involved. since that time we've looked at it very carefully, and we can tell that it was made with a old piece of iron or another piece of harder stone, and it looks a lot older when you look at it under a loupe or a microscope. So as above, so below. The Spanish knew about these constellations, and they used them when they hid the cash that they hid. And we've been to this location. There's a name carved there, an old-timer's name who I've talked about in other videos, the name of Llewellyn Harris. And so recently I've come across a great-great-grandson of Llewellyn Harris, and I come to find out that Llewellyn Harris, according to his journals, which were in the family, that Llewellyn Harris did indeed find the treasure that was there. So we can put that to rest. So that story has come full circle. It's very interesting that the Spanish left these maps to this cache face down on the ground as a legal document. In fact, on the document, or the map that I found, it says that this is to stay there under penalty of death. And it says that the treasure was hidden because of hostilities of the Yubacaras Indians. In other words, they were attacked by the Indians. I think some of their mules or horses were killed, so they couldn't take all the treasure back with them, and so they had to cache some of it. They had to make a map. And if they showed up without all the gold or silver that they were supposed to have for their tithe, or for their quinto, or 20%, their fifth for the king, and I don't know what percent of that went to the crown, but they were in danger of being put to death. And indeed, on the map that I found, it has a picture of a skull and a crossbones. Underneath has the words, under penalty of mutera.